Wes du har min friend, and welcome to the first episode, or rather the second, because the first one was an introduction, of my Fantasy Corner video series, in which I talk about something that I've actually got formal education at, which is 2 degrees in English literature, focusing on the fantasy of the 20th century and in the ancient Old English, or more generally, European Germanic literature. Now, because we've got the Christmas holidays approaching, or for those of you who do not celebrate Christmas, holidays, and for those of you who do not celebrate holidays, Hanukkah, or just a couple of days off, I've got 3 recommendations for reading, because, a lot of people will have some days off, so we will need to enjoy ourselves. Of course, the most important thing to do at Christmas holidays is spend the holidays with our loved ones. Just conversing, just spending some quality time with family and friends, even though it's a bit more complicated these days in the days of the pandemic, but we will have to try to make the best of it. But a lot of us will find a bit more time for some leisure reading, leisure entertainment, even though voracious readers such as myself will always find time for reading. And I had to cut down this recommendation list only to 3 books, because if I could talk about each and every single Christmas recommendation, read, that video would be like an hour long. So I chose 3 books that are not thick, that are not that heavy reading, that are very easy to read. They are quick reads, and they are appropriate for both children and adults. And they are, of course, more or less fantasy. 2 of them are really very much fantasy. One of them is like a fairy story-ish poem, but it's very popular, and I think that a lot of people know it. So my first recommendation is, of course, and obviously, was written by John Roland Reuel Tolkien, and is the Letters from Father Christmas. Which is just a collection of letters that Tolkien wrote for his children when they were little, to entertain them during Christmas and to prolong their belief in Father Christmas, or for those of you in modern America, Santa Claus. And this was something very beautiful and touching, because and in this, if you look at this, you will realize that not only was Tolkien a brilliant linguist, an academic, a genius writer, a world builder, and also a painter. He painted this and many more paintings. But he was also a genuinely good human being, and the perfect father, because he really took his time. And he wrote many illustrated letters with beautiful handwriting, in which he made up stories about Father Christmas and his adventures at the North Pole with the polar bear and elves. And he there started showing signs of his future fantasy novels, and he used his passion for old Germanic literatures and old Germanic cultures and languages, even in these small things, these simple things as letters from Father Christmas for his children, even started using runic letters in them. And there is a huge goblin war in one of these stories, such as you can on this you can see in this illustration here. So he wrote these letters before he published The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and already he was showing signs of what he truly loved, because at the time he was already working on the Silmarillion, or his Arda stories. So you can really see that his main creation always sipped through and in everything he did and everything he wrote. And even though there are many aspects of his grander scheme, Letters from Father Christmas can be read on its own, and it will entertain both children and adults in a very truly Christmassy holiday spirit fashion. This is my number 1 recommendation. My number 2 recommendation is Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. Now, Terry Pratchett wrote dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of fabulous and fantastic novels from the Discworld. And I have to say that not only is this a perfect Christmas recommendation, but quite honestly, Hogfather is my own personal favorite Terry Pratchett book. Might be just the fact that I have a beautiful memory of reading this book because it was one of the first books written by Terry Pratchett that I read. And I read it, when I read it for the first time, I read it at Christmas. And it truly adds to the atmosphere of Christmas reading this book, and it adds to the experience of reading this book if you'll find yourself in the Christmas holiday time. So it's a parody on Earth Christmas, on the primary real world Christmas, where because the Discworld is really like a mirror image of our true primary world, the Earth, but in fact it is a parody on it. Everything is twisted there, so because they've got the same things there, only these things are Terry Pratchett's fantasy comedic versions of our things. So the holidays in Terry Pratchett's book, well, they still do celebrate it, but there are of course many things that are twisted and many things that are, well, parodied, such as the Father Christmas himself. They've got the Hogfather, was very much based on the old European mythology, and you can even see it here in the book or read about it, that he was an old man from old folklore and myths who then got into the habit of distributing gifts. And why Hogfather? Because his sleigh is not drawn by reindeers, but by, well, wild pigs. So I do definitely recommend this. And the last recommendation, because, as I said, Christmas holidays isn't that long, so there's not like a brutally huge amount of time, is How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. I know, you might say, well, this is a children's book. It's just, it's just simple poems about Grinch, the Green Man, and we've got the films anyway. Well, I do recommend it, because if it wasn't for Dr. Seuss, children's literature would be somewhere completely different. So both these three men really influenced both fantasy literature for adults and children's literature to such an extent that they have changed it forever. And not only is Grinch, or How the Grinch Stole Christmas, an intriguing and a funny story about this green goblin who hates Christmas, and it's like really almost mirrors Charles Dickens's Christmas Carol, him being like Scrooge, but it is also masterfully written in that the form of the poetry is perfect. I always say that I hate free verse, and I love when poetry's got some nice rhythm and metre and form. And it just, when you read it aloud, it just flows. It's a flow. So, for example, if I was to read aloud like the first couple of verses, every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. So, after reading Tolkien's Letters from Father Christmas and Hogfather, this will be a nice cherry on top to top your Christmas reads and enjoy the holiday spirit while sipping on a holiday beverage, munching on some holiday snacks, and spending time with your family. So as I said, all 3 books, these 3 recommendations can be read very quickly, very fast, and they will make your holidays a bit more fantasy-like, if you will. So That is why I chose to make this episode, this fashion, because, we've got the holidays coming, and the next video, I promise, will be a bit more in depth and a bit more academic, if you will. So let me know in the comments down below, what are your favorite fantasy reads? They can be anything. It doesn't have to be fantasy. It can be comic books, can be different genres, can be novels, poetry, anything. Let me know in the comments down below, and that would be all from me. See you soon. Bye.